レートビールは死んだ。
That's right. You heard correctly. What was that?
レートビールは死んだ。
RateBeer is dead. Yes, and this is Japanese craft beer reviews, and I'm here with a little report for you about one of our favorite beer apps, RateBeer, and RateBeer is now gone. RateBeer died on February 1st, 2025, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. This was a large source of beer information and opinion, of course, very, very subjective sort of thing, but it was built up over all this long time by all of these members, people who knew a lot about beer and had tried so many different styles of beer and different breweries. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we have lost and what we might miss now. I'll tell you a little bit about the story of RateBeer very briefly and how it eventually folded. And then I'm going to give you a tour of the main features of RateBeer. So, in other words, what we lost. RateBeer was founded in the year 2000, so just about 25 years ago. And what was interesting about this site is that it was crowdsourced. It was built up by lots of people, and it was moderated. There were administrators, including many local ones. So, for example, here in Japan, there were at least 2 local administrators to moderate content. And this is an important point, I think. Some sites are not. For example, Untapped is not moderated, and you get lots of junky information, duplicate information because of that. RateBeer featured beer ratings on a 5-point scale and actually a decimal point scale, so you could rate, say, for example, 2.5 or 3.5, and rarely up to 4.9 or even 5. And, very important, with comments. So you had to, you should review a beer. In some cases it was just ticking, putting up a number, but in many cases comments. So this is the difference between RateBeer and Untapped, is that it's both quantitative, numerical, and qualitative with comments. So there were interesting beer reviews. And over time, it accumulated a large number of ratings, beer ratings. And the top 3 raters had over 50,000 each. Amazing. The top rater had over 75,000 ratings. Sugoku nai? Isn't that amazing? I don't know how they do it. And the top raters were generally from Scandinavian countries. They often had names that seemed kind of like Viking sort of names. And RateBeer also played an important part in the lives of many of these top beer drinkers' events. There were RateBeer gatherings in different locations, sometimes annually. Trades, people would trade beer. People met each other at some of these gatherings, but most importantly was the idea of the crowdsourcing, the fact that all of this information was being built up and developed into this incredible reference source.
RateBeer ist tot.
Okay, what happened to RateBeer? Well, what happened was the head company AB InBev had a growth and innovation group they called ZX Ventures, and in 2017 they took a minority share in the RateBeer site. Okay, this was just the very beginning. And then in 2019, ZX Ventures acquired the totality of RateBeer. And it was at this point that I think a lot of people decided to leave RateBeer, unfortunately. So, for example, in Japan, a number of members who I know decided that enough was enough, and they left. They left RateBeer. And finally, in 2024, AB InBev announced the closure of RateBeer, that RateBeer would close on February 1st, 2025. So the end of the story. Well, the problem I think is that AB InBev, sometimes large companies purchase another company and they're not quite sure what to do with it. And in this case, AB InBev didn't seem to really know what did they want to do with RateBeer. Well, it was of course a source of knowledge and trends. They could see what was going on. They could use the data. Yeah, but they didn't seem to really be able to utilize it in any way that they valued. So the site was neglected, unfortunately. It started falling behind. And the mobile app that they developed, it never really worked very well. It was not user-friendly at all, compared to Untapped, which, of course, has a very, very mobile-friendly app. You can use it very easily. A simple way to check in, and this is an important feature. RateBeer has check-ins, but it wasn't really available in real time. And also, bar TV service, so you could connect to a computer app, and in bars you could see what was happening, what people were drinking, where your friends were drinking, etc.
RateBeer está muerta.
It is. One of the main features, of course, of RateBeer was, in fact, the ratings. And you rated 5 different aspects of a beer. It was rated on aroma, appearance, taste, body or mouthfeel, and overall. So as you can see, this would add up to 50 points, but actually it was given a decimal score from 0.5 to 5.0. So anything over, say, over 3 is probably very drinkable. Anything over 3.5 is good. Anything over 4 is probably really, really good. And the ratings for each beer were averaged. So if 10 people rated a certain beer, the ratings were averaged into an average rating score. And another feature of RateBeer was the overall top 50. And the site would list the top 50 beers, again by average, for each style. So, for example, alt beer. The highest alt beer was R.I.P Doppelstick. And, so you could take a look and see what were the top beers in a certain style. You could also look at, see, what were the best beers by each country. And in Japan, the best one, and this has been true, I think, for a number of years, was Hitachi no Nest Espresso Stout.
RateBeer est mort.
And another feature was places. And this was a very interesting one, for people who travel. So you could get a list of breweries in a certain location, bars, places to drink, beer stores. If you're traveling in a certain city, where are the best beer? These were also rated too as well, so people would give a score. So you could see what store should I go to if I'm in, say, Atlanta or Copenhagen. Restaurants. And it was searchable by country and by region within a country for certain countries. And ranked, again, by reviewer scores. So all of these, you could see what were the top ranked of each of these places. So, and RateBeer also had a very interesting kind of primer on different beer styles. So you could go up and read about different types of styles. So one section was Anglo-American ales, and they went all the way from alt beer to strong ale. Lagers, from amber lager to Zwickel beer. You wanted to read about Belgian style ales? They got them. They had all kinds. Stout and porter, many types. Wheat beer and sour beer, and a variety of other styles for cider, mead, sake. So you could read about the characteristics of these different beer styles, how the flavor and aroma characteristics, the mouthfeel should be, for a pure example of each style.
RateBeer is dood.
It is. RateBeer also had a number of lists, and you could customize the top 50. You could look at the beer gods, and these were people who had a large number of ratings. What were their top 50 beers? The top beers that were most widely distributed, big new beers, high alcohol, seasonal beers. What happened in the last 90 days? What were the top, in other words, new beers? Retired beers. So beers you could not get anymore, but you could go and take a look and see what did people like before. And finally, the worst beers in the world. And you have 5 seconds to guess the worst beer on RateBeer. What was it? It was Natural Light by AB InBev. Yes, indeed. Okay, more lists included who was brewing the most, okay, who was putting out the most beer, who had the strongest beers in the world, what was the top session strength beers, every week the best beers, how about how hoppy the beers was, the top international bittering units, the top of the month, the most wanted beers. People could put a list of beers that they had and maybe were available to trade and what beers they wanted. The newest beers.
RateBeer는 죽었다.
죽었나. And a brewer's directory site as well. So you could look at breweries and get information about them. Meaderies, cideries, sake producers, and they were all listed by country and in many cases within a country different regions. And you could also add new breweries. So as the beer scene expanded, you could add new brewers. So in Japan right now, new breweries are being added are being built all the time. In some countries, for example, the United States, that may be the opposite case. The RateBeer had forums, so much like Reddit or something like that, or what used to be called a bulletin board on the internet. So there was beer talk, site news about the RateBeer site, trading. People were interested in making a trade, feedback, homebrewers, and news from the beer industry, and RateBeer feedback, and travel. And this was often a very interesting one. So people who were going to a new place would ask people, what do you recommend? Where should I go? What store should I get to? And what are the best breweries? And milestones, people who had reached a certain level of beer consumption, and regional forums. And so I used to definitely participate in the Japan beer section, but in recent years not so much.
RateBeer è morto.
Another feature was you could get information about your local area, your country, or your region as well. So where was a beer found? What bar or store could you go to find a certain beer? What were the latest beers? So beers were often listed by the, what had been most recently added. Check-ins at a place. This was a feature of many locations. Place reviews, and this is a feature I used a lot. So before you go to a place, or you would want to check and see what did people say about it. What had they written about this place before? And of course, beer ratings in your local area. So in my case, in Japan, events that were happening. And here's a very interesting feature: rankings of users. So who had the most beer ratings? And for a number of years, there was one guy, F1 fan, who was by far the heaviest, or the I guess I can say heaviest, the heaviest beer rater. Who had the most place ratings? Who had rated the most breweries? Who had the most ratings in 2025? Certainly my numbers were highest earlier and went down year by year. Who were the top raters by beer style? Who were the top raters in a country? The top rater in Japan is a friend of mine. He had over 15,000 ratings. I had a minuscule 5,000 something. Who were the top raters in a certain region, part of the country? Who had the most ratings by country and most ratings by region? And who had rated the most countries in the world? And finally, the most regions that were rated as well.
RateBeer 已死亡。
Okay, a few more things. Mayors, and there were mayors of different places. So you could be the mayor of a favorite beer bar if you had the most ratings and that sort of thing. Who traded the most? Who had edited the most number of places? Who had the most beers entered? In other words, adding beers. Who were the top distribution contributors? The most individual brew pubs rated, and the top rated beers by your friends. So you could add people as your friends. I think I had about 14 or 15 people that I considered friends or followed. What were their top ones? Who had the top number of points on the leaderboard? Who had sampled the most top 50 beers? And the strong beers, who had rated the most of those? Sake ratings. A friend of mine was the top sake rater on RateBeer for sure. And other forms, cider, perry, mead, sake, who had rated most of those. Group lists. So older people, people who love stouts, Belgian beer, people who liked sour stuff. Pale ale, strong pale ales. Pilsner. Pilsagarin, that sounds like Harry Potter sort of group. Bock, strong lagers, and wheat beers, and people who like session beers, and unusual types of beers, so things that might be considered other, and women raters as well.
RateBeer er død.
Another feature was RateBeer Best, and this was an interesting one. It was an annual report, and it was announced every year. RateBeer started in 2000. The first one was in 2001, and the last one in 2020. So earlier I said the site was kind of neglected. Even up until the end, you could see the first thing you saw on the RateBeer homepage was the announcement of the best for 2020. So even in 2024, so they just simply hadn't updated that feature at all. So this was determined by user ratings from the year before. And so, for example, in the last year they did it, in 2020, there were more than 715,000 beers and 35,000 brewers from around the world. So quite a selection. And places, 69,000. This include bars, tap rooms, brew pubs. They would have a list of best new brewers. So some people I knew won best new brewery in Japan a few years back. Best beer and brewers by sub-region, regional area. And the best places for beer. And the best places by country. Best reviewers of the year. Best brewers by style. Beers, brewers, and brewers by country. Brewers, the top 100 breweries in the world, and maybe it's no secret, but Hill Farmstead was very often the #1 brewer in the world, according to RateBeer. So there are other places to go. Untapped is one. I have used Untapped. I don't like it so much, but I do it. Beer Advocate is another. I never joined. It has very low representation in Japan. So Untapped is not moderated. I don't like that about it. Beer Advocate advocate, has a very limited representation for where I live. And there's a new site. Many brewers are moving to a new site called Brewer. In fact, I have two. I got all of my ratings onto an Excel sheet and my place ratings as well. And I eventually will put that onto Brewer. Apparently they're quite busy right now because so many people are moving there from RateBeer. Well, yeah, things change, of course, but you know, we're going to miss a lot about it, and it won't quite be the same without RateBeer. RateBeer is dead.